we are suspending security assistance only to Pakistan at this time, until the Pakistani government takes decisive action against groups including the Afghan Taliban and the Haqqani network.
After months of threats, the U.S. has acted on its word and suspended more than $1 billion in annual security assistance to Pakistan. The U.S. says the country knowingly allows Taliban fighters and other militants to operate within its borders, hindering U.S. military efforts. U.S. officials are demanding immediate action to deal with the issue, but Islamabad denies the charge of fighting one group of terrorists but supporting another. Meanwhile, the U.S.-Pakistan relationship is suffering, and cooperation on a range of issues from military to intelligence sharing are now at risk. The U.S. is heavily reliant on Pakistan as a key supply route in the U.S.-led war effort in neighboring Afghanistan. There is some concern Pakistan could retaliate by cutting U.S. access to that route. They did it before over a previous disagreement in 2011. Many observers, however, believe this time is different. The new, more rigid U.S. position on Pakistan is taking the two countries down an uncertain path. Pakistan may be less likely to choose taking a hard line in the face of a U.S. ultimatum to either placate an angry ally or turn its back on a long-standing friendship. Pakistan has received more than $33 billion in U.S. aid since 2001. More than two-thirds of it is security support, according to congressional records. Most of what's been frozen is part of the Coalition Support Fund, which is money paid to Pakistan to cover costs associated with counter-terror operations. President Donald Trump says Pakistan is taking U.S. money, but failing to fulfill the key objective of the agreement: to root out the terrorists.
Pakistan has much to gain from partnering with our effort in Afghanistan. It has much to lose by continuing to harbor criminals and terrorists.
Trump's public rebukes of Pakistan have at times horrified some of his more diplomatic peers. Among the most notable, the scathing New Year's Day tweet. The United States has foolishly given Pakistan more than $33 billion in aid over the last 15 years, and they've given us nothing but lies and deceit, thinking of our leaders as fools. They give safe haven to the terrorists we hunt in Afghanistan with little help, no more. Pakistanis see things differently. In an interview, TRT World's Crossing the Line, Pakistan's opposition leader pointed out that his country has been on the front line of the US-led war on terror since 2001, with devastating consequences.
Pakistan lost 70,000 people dead in this war which had nothing to do with us, only on behest, fighting on the behest of Americans. Over $100 billion lost to the economy. And then to be blamed for the American total failure in Afghanistan, I think it's a travesty.
Imran Khan has long criticized Pakistan's ruling party for supporting the US-led campaign in Afghanistan. Today, the ruling party seems to be largely in agreement with Khan. Pakistan's foreign minister has decried the US allegations against it, going so far to say history shows Pakistan must be careful in trusting their US ally. So is the US unfairly singling out an ally, or is Pakistan the one stringing along an old friend? Basil Rehan, The Newsmakers.
Well, joining me now from Pakistan's capital is Tariq Pirzada. He's a security and political analyst. From Islamabad, also, we have Imtiaz Gul. He's the founder and executive director of the Center for Research and Security Studies, a think tank focused on Pakistan. In Washington, D.C., Jeff Smith. He's a research fellow at the Asian Studies Center of the Heritage Foundation. I thank you all for joining us. Tariq, let me ask you, is Trump doing the right thing because Pakistan fights one Taliban but supports another?
Well, you know, this allegation is not a new allegation. It has been leveled against Pakistan since the days of George W. Bush Jr., and that is the charge that continues even today. But the reality on the ground is that Pakistan has taken action in South Waziristan, has cleared that area. It has taken major military action and rather a series of actions in North Waziristan. That region has been cleared. Most of the Pakistan is not experiencing, widespread terrorism at all. The armed forces and the counter-terrorism forces are operating day and night. So there is no, number one. Number two, there is a charge, and this is a specific charge that I hear, that there is a network of there's a Haqqani network that is operating in Pakistan, and that there are other networks, Afghan Taliban networks operating in Pakistan. I can assure you one thing. Had there been any Taliban network operating in Pakistan, that would have been put an end to, because that is not in the interest of the Pakistani society. We have suffered a lot. Pakistani society is sick and tired of terrorism. We are sick and tired of the situation in Afghanistan.
Okay.
So if there is anybody in Pakistan or elsewhere, it could be some individuals, as they may be anywhere in the world. But as far as the networks are concerned, their back has been broken, and there is no proof, and the United States has not provided any evidence on that.
Okay, so something that Tariq said, I'm going to take and pose to Imtiaz. The point that the Americans and the Afghans are making, yes, Pakistan is quiet and you're taking care of terrorists in Pakistan. But the problem is it's the terrorists that are attacking Afghanistan and US and NATO interests across the border that Pakistan is at worst supporting, at best turning a blind eye to. That's the charge. Imtiaz, does it check out at all?
Well, I think a very recent report yesterday, actually, from Agence France Presse says that the last 6 months have seen about 20 major attacks in the capital city of Kabul, and they've all been claimed by Daesh. And Daesh is the enemy of the Taliban, of the Haqqani network. So the report also suggests that all Daesh or IS networks are operating under the nose of NDS and the Afghan security establishment. So there is some sort of disconnect. Of course, Pakistan has been taking sides, but these preferences are driven, as far as Pakistan is concerned, as much by geopolitical considerations as the geopolitical considerations drive and influence the American partnerships with non-state actors in Syria, in Iraq, with the Kurds. The Turkish Kurds are called by President Erdogan, for instance, terrorists, whereas they have been receiving support from the US. US publicly has been sponsoring and arming non-state actors against the Syrian government. So this is the charge, while the charge may be true, but this is not typical to Pakistan alone.
Okay,
Every country
that's interesting.
hedges.
Okay. Interesting point. Okay, so Jeff Smith, on the one hand, one guest is saying it's not happening. The other guest is saying while it might be happening, you do the same. So why are you, why are you pointing out our flaws? Do not look at the speck in your brother's eye and ignore the plank in your own. Is the US scapegoating Pakistan for its failures in Afghanistan?
No, absolutely not. And the notion that there are no Taliban militants operating in Pakistan is not only ridiculous, frankly, it's quite offensive. Anybody who's looked at this question, in fact, every intelligence organization around the world and every objective analyst around the world that has looked at this question has found that there are indeed many militant groups operating inside Pakistan, and that many of these groups have received support from the Pakistani state and intelligence services.
Can you mention the name of any group?
That is an objective
Can you tell us the name of any group that is operating in Pakistan?
By everybody who is not in Pakistan.
Can you tell us the name of any network that is operating in Pakistan? Can name it. Please name it.
I can start with the Haqqani network, which is the deadliest militant outfit that's currently operating in Afghanistan. Haqqani network does not exist in Pakistan. They have 43% of Afghan territory under their control. Sure. Why would they need to operate from Pakistan? Kindly counter my argument. They have 43% Sure. The reason they operate from
Pakistan is... Why would they operate from Pakistan?
Okay, go ahead, Jeff. Okay, you asked the question, Tariq. Tariq, you asked the question. Go ahead, Jeff.
Sure. The reason they operate from Pakistan is because it is almost impossible to defeat an insurgency that has safe haven inside the borders of a neighboring state. This is sort of counterinsurgency 101 and is the principal reason that we've been unable to find peace and stability in Afghanistan. It's because Pakistan is playing a double game that we're all very well aware of. and that, in fact, this game has been rather successful
that's an
for
allegation.
Pakistan. Pakistan is seeking a government in Afghanistan that is weak and unstable. In fact, I think it wants a government in Afghanistan that is very friendly and very anti-India, but it knows the Afghan people will never vote such a government into power because they are now deeply hostile to Pakistan after 10 years of this mess. So if it cannot have a pliable and submissive government in Kabul, Pakistan wants to see an unstable and divided government in Afghanistan.
Okay, Tariq, address that.
Why? Let me answer that. Look, Pakistan's interest lies in having a very stable government in Afghanistan. The point that the gentleman has raised from Washington, that the government in Kabul is weak, that confirms the fact that the United States has failed to actually create a government, support a government that can function effectively. It has failed to establish an environment in Afghanistan that is free of terror, that is free of Daesh, and because that is the fact, that proves that not only the United States has failed in Afghanistan, that is trying to malign Pakistan by bringing a plethora of charges against it.
Okay, so that's the Pakistani claim, scapegoating. Right, okay, fair enough. Let me bring in Imtiaz Gulia. Imtiaz, the Pakistanis feel very deeply that their sacrifices in the war on terror haven't been recognized by the United States and others. I was speaking to opposition politician Imran Khan recently, and he's on the same page as the government right now on this issue. He said, you know, we lost 70,000 lives in the war on terror. The Americans don't even recognize that. They don't even realize that Pakistan made tremendous human sacrifices in this war on terror, fighting America's war as they find it. So, Imtiaz, if the United States was more sensitive to this, that the Pakistanis had a huge cost in this war on terror, would tensions be, I guess, would they die down a little bit? Would it make it easier? Is it an issue of optics here, the Americans not respecting the Pakistanis?
Well, I think the issue is much deeper, and following the January 1st tweet by President Trump, I think there's a lot of skepticism into the motives behind these allegations, because if we were to look at Afghanistan, now this is not an issue between Pakistan, the US, or Pakistan and Afghanistan, or Afghanistan and India alone. This is a multilateral issue which is being driven by geopolitical considerations. And the big question that we must all ask of ourselves is that Iran and Pakistan constitute the two major strategic neighbors of Afghanistan. Now, the United States wants to secure a peace in Afghanistan to the exclusion of Iran, the other strategic neighbor. This is, I would say, ridiculous, because Iran also has about 1,200 kilometer long border with Afghanistan, and the Americans have their bases up in the south, which Iranians are not comfortable with. So just to suggest that the entire string of militancy or terrorism is coming from Pakistan is ludicrous, if not ridiculous. Okay. Also, borne out by the fact that there are sanctuaries which are home to anti-Pakistan terrorists, and the American drones have taken them out. Okay. Now, whether Pakistan is sheltering those soldiers or those forces which are hunting the American forces, that is then also denied by the recent report, as I stated earlier, by AFP, which says the last major 20 attacks have been carried out by the IS, Daesh, and not any other group.
And that's an interesting point, and there are also reports that the Russians and the Iranians are supporting the Taliban in some forms, and they have been over the past couple of years. Jeff, I want you to have a little listen to what Pakistan's Foreign Minister Khawaja Asif had to say to me just a few weeks ago. Have a little listen, and I've got a question for you off the back of that.
We play their proxies, and then whenever their interest is served, or whenever their objectives are achieved, they wash their hands off and go away. And that doesn't serve my interest, the interest of my people, people of Pakistan. And Iran is our next door neighbor. We share centuries of history. And China is a very, very trusted friend.
So you know what he's saying, Jeff? He's saying they use us, they wash their hands, and now we have options. So basically go to hell. That's what he's been saying. And he's saying we have the Iranians, we have the Chinese. So if Trump is going to cut aid, what's that going to do? Because the Pakistanis are clearly pivoting to the Chinese and the Iranians. How is it actually tangibly going to do anything different?
Well, I don't know that many people here actually expect a fundamental change in Pakistan's behavior from this recession of U.S. aid. You know, I think the fundamental argument many Pakistanis make is that America is paying money to compensate them for security operations, to compensate them for doing what America wants them to do. And while I would wholeheartedly support the idea of providing Pakistan a tremendous amount of aid to root out these militants because it is difficult, because it is costly, they're simply not doing so, which is why I think the aid needs to be curtailed. But it is not an American imperative or an American operation. Let
me answer that.
If you have sovereignty, sovereignty comes with responsibility, and you have responsibility to patrol your own borders and ensure that your own borders are not being used to launch attacks against other countries. That is your responsibility as a sovereign nation.
Let me just talk about that.
That is not something you're entitled to receive compensation
Tariq, response
for.
to that. Give us a response to that.
Very quickly. Pakistan is a sovereign country not because of the guarantees of the United States. Pakistan is a sovereign country in its own right, number one. The war that we are fighting, we have been fighting for the last 16 years. This was a US-imposed war on terror. There was no terror being perpetrated in Pakistan in 2001. And actually there was none until 2004 when the first suicide attack happened in Pakistan. So let me advise my friend that think before you talk. You are actually taking it for granted that the United States has not imposed any cost on Pakistan. We have lost $120 billion in terms of economic loss, loss of investment in Pakistan, and because of the instability inculcated into our land, because of the US policy, no Pakistani was involved in the attack on the World Trade Center. So all this talk about Pakistan being a culprit, Pakistan being responsible for US failure in Afghanistan, Pakistan being responsible for US failure elsewhere in the world, that is a hogwash. Okay. Somebody has to understand.
Fair enough, and you made the point strongly. Jeff, your response to that very briefly before I go to Imtiaz for final thoughts. Jeff?
Pakistan has borne great costs from this struggle. In fact, maybe the most costs. The greatest victims of these fanatics have been Pakistani citizens, frankly. Some 50,000 have been killed. But they haven't been killed because of the United States. They've been killed because Pakistan has allowed
because of supporting the US policy
to fester in its border regions,
as an evil
and has
because
supported many of
the
those.
US policy.
Okay, listen, I have to wrap very quickly. And I think both of you have made your points very clearly. Imtiaz Gul, let me bring you in and just kind of step back for a second and ask you, how far are we from the point of no return when we look at this straining relationship, and who's losing more, the United States or Pakistan?
Well, I think the U.S. Former Special Representative and Ambassador Richard Olson has also in an article very clearly spelled out that probably the U.S. would lose more, because if Pakistan doesn't cooperate in Afghanistan, U.S. troops in Afghanistan would be like a stranded whale. So all I would like to say is that the United States has seen the consequences, deadly consequences of its geopolitics, starting from Afghanistan, Iraq, Syria, and Libya. So to suggest that it's just the United States that wants democracy all over the world and is pursuing just peace all over the region, all over the world, I don't think that somehow gels with the real ground situation in Afghanistan or in Iraq. I think this is a very, very complicated situation created by the geopolitics of the United States. We have suffered, they're also suffering, and so is Afghanistan. Some leaders there are investing in their continued stability or instability by lapping up the American and the Indian narrative on Pakistan.
Okay. Imtiaz Gul, Tariq Pirzada and Jeff Smith. I've got to wrap, but it's been a pleasure talking to all of you. I thank you very much for joining us here on the Newsmakers.